Welcome to the Happy Mindset Show, episode number 14. Today's episode is called The Subtle Art of Learning. And today's episode is a little bit different in that it's an interview that I gave recently for the Mind Takeaway, which has been run by Mira and Peter Griffiths. If you want to find out more about the Mind Takeaway, you can head over to Facebook and find their group there. In the group, they talk about the creative process, relationships, and different aspects of life and how it relates to state of mind. So it's definitely worth giving it a look.
Hi, everyone. It is our, second, third interview. And the first one with Denis Murphy. Denis is a language coach. Can I say that, Denis?
Yeah, that's it. Exactly it.
I've been working with Denis for a bit, and he helped me understand some things that I have forgotten about the learning new skills. And we are here today to, our idea for this interview or this conversation was to help people to understand that they are capable of much more than they think they are in terms of learning a new skill or learning a language in this case, or maybe changing whatever their profession may be in the future. So I'll let Denis to start and maybe say a little bit more about it, and then we'll go through the conversation. So welcome, Denis.
Thanks, Mira. Yes, I'm a language coach, so I teach people around foreign languages and computer programming, but I point to the actual learning process that it's built on. So my journey has been like a process of overcoming self-limitation. So originally, I used to see myself as a linguistics person, that I wasn't a computer programming person. And I had this concept in my head that I'm not an IT guy, I'm no good with computers, up until about 2 or 3 years ago. And as long as I was believing that, I never got any good at computers because the interest wasn't there. And I just had this belief that wasn't me, that's not who I am. But when I started questioning stuff, got curious about it, and then kind of saw why I wanted to learn something, things started to change. And I think it was a change in my energy too. The belief started to gradually come as I started taking consistent action every day. And and that's what I did in linguistics too. So I learned Spanish and Italian when I came out of university. And I had this idea in my head that you can't learn languages within a few months. And I came across a book called Fluent in 3 Months by Benny Lewis. And that really challenged my assumptions. And at the time I was reading it, and it was like, you can speak a language from day one. And I was like, what do you want about? You can't speak a language from day one. And but in hindsight now, I can see what he was saying was to get out there and start practicing, because you actually learn better in context. And a lot of the time it's our own kind of stories and psychological blocks that are getting in the way of us learning a skill. So when you put yourself out there, it becomes less of a thing because you're doing it from day one, week one, and you can actually learn the practical stuff within context, what you need to know to get you on that journey straight away. So that's been my journey so far. And it's a continuous journey. Like at the moment, I'm going to start giving talks. And it's like being back to that state again where I don't know what to expect. I know I'm going to be a bit nervous, a bit anxious, but that's okay because that's the process. You have to start somewhere, and you just have to accept that. I accept that. But then it's exciting because you can always grow. So whenever I'm in an area where I feel anxious and nervous about it, uncomfortable, I know it's an area that when I face it, when I start moving in that direction, I will grow as a person, as an individual. And that's, for me, what the learning process is all about. It's like growing as a person and learning technical stuff that actually will be useful to yourself and to other people. So.
When you said this, it feels uncomfortable. And when you feel that that feeling, you kind of know that you're going in a good direction. And I heard Peter talking about the same thing in the interview that he's done with Jamie Smart. It's maybe a month, just before New Year's, I think you've done, or after, I don't know. That it was when you were going in a new direction and started looking at the new direction, that you realize that when you are feeling uncomfortable, that's actually like a sign that you're going in a right direction. Can you can you explain that, Peter? Sorry.
Yeah, I recall the interview. Yeah, I can resonate with that, Denis, because when I tried something new, there's a bit of fear there, or, I realized there's a change coming, and that's when, you've got a bit of traction and things are really working, because you can use that as a driver. So I think it's a useful feeling to have, because a lot of the times in the past, I would identify that with, oh, it's too difficult, or, this story narrative you start playing in your head is, oh, it's going to be too difficult. Who am I to do this? But now it's becoming easier. If you just view that as, oh, something's coming, must be good. And that bit of fear is actually healthy. So let's just go forward with it.
Yeah, I find that I've noticed that as a doing something new, and then you just have this feeling that is just telling you that you're doing something new. It doesn't, what we used to do, I guess all of us in the past, and still do sometimes, me at least, if I feel that feeling, I think that it's telling me something about future. And because it's not very comfortable feeling, I would, assume that, oh my God, something bad will happen in the future, and then I won't attempt to go in that direction. But actually, it's just telling you that there is something new, something that you haven't done before. And it's quite interesting.
Yeah, it's a good indicator. Like, I used to be somebody who would, I suppose, try and waltz around all these kind of uncomfortable emotions and try and avoid having to go there. But now the more I can kind of see that that's an area I can improve in. And when I do face those things, I will have a more freedom of mind, more clarity to work from, and I'll be able to help more people and reach more people. It's worth feeling those uncomfortable emotions then, because before I thought it was like, I didn't know that they were a sign that I could improve in that area. I thought they were just uncomfortable feelings that I just felt out of place, and I didn't want to feel out of place. So I would try and avoid them as much as I could. And but what that ended up doing was it started boxing me in. So I became that I'm not an IT guy. I'm not a person who goes out dancing. I'm not a person who sings. That's all it really did. It just put that box around me that I did myself. Nobody else kind of put me in that box. I put it in myself inside there.
Yeah, and it's amazing that you noticed, once you remove that thing that's actually invisible in the first place, it's just, again, something we tell ourselves. And if you tell yourself something enough, you actually start to believe it. So then if you put that on the flip side, if you tell yourself you can do it, then it does open up. Obviously it takes a bit of work, a bit of dedication. You've still got to do, take some action. But then that's it. It opens up a hell of a lot of, possibilities. And Denis, can you explain, I know you showed me a taste of how you would accelerate someone's learning in terms of a language, because I'm terrible. I'm still trying to learn German. I've been in Germany for a while, so it's a little bit embarrassing in terms of my language skills. But from what you showed me, it looks like it's, doable in terms of learning a language within a couple of months, 3 months. Yes.
Yeah, it all depends on like the time you can put into it. So what I found from my own experience first is that when I didn't do the work, I was like getting caught up in stories about stuff that I was getting in the way from me actually doing the action that was required to get to where I needed to get to. So like if you wanted to learn German, just kind of doesn't need to be massive action straight away. It's like if you're finding it very, very difficult to get into doing it, if you're finding it that it's something that is like a chore and it's something that you keep putting off, then just lower the barrier to entry for yourself. Just kind of go, I'll do 5 minutes a day. But kind of approach it in a way, just ask yourself different questions, kind of go, how could I make this fun for myself? Like there's lots of stuff out there now. There's like Duolingo, which can make it a game for you. There's like Hello Lingo. There's no excuses really anymore. You're in a big city. There's lots of multinational, like people from everywhere. So you could easily go to a language exchange group and start meeting some interesting people there without even knowing anything, because they welcome beginners. And you could just say the basics, like, how are you? I'm from, and just speak in English for a little bit. But gradually you'll start getting better because your interest will peak. So for languages, I found that when I could see I could communicate in real time to people, I started understanding why I was learning the language. And that gave me the interest to learn a little bit more each time so I could communicate a little bit better, so I could express myself a bit better and understand these people a bit better. And so I would advise first to kind of go, okay, I'll try and learn the language in 2 years. Like if you're not somebody who's already got a lot of experience in languages and that kind of thing, 3 months is a good title, but you need to kind of start small and build a solid foundation. So it's like I'll learn German within 2 years. I'll learn 5 minutes a day consistently, but I'll do it smart. I'll learn the stuff. I'll pay attention to what I speak about in my foreign language, and I'll pay attention to how I can kind of start saying, how are you? My name is, I'm interested in football. Did you see the game last night? These sorts of stuff. So like, I'm not learning stuff. If I'm a guy who's interested in football, I'm not learning stuff to do with makeup, or I'm not learning lists of animals that I'm not going to use after a week or two. Yeah, so it's just kind of just being practical. And that way, when I approach it that way, once you get some sort of belief that this is possible, I find I'm less caught into like the stories of this is so hard. But then also to realize there will be dips. There will be like times where I'm feeling like, oh, I'm not making progress here. So I remember when I was learning programming last year for so probably 8 or 9 months into it, it's kind of like, am I actually learning that much? And but I knew that tomorrow I'd still do it. And the thing with learning is that sometimes after like a week or so, you don't really think something's going in, and all of a sudden things click again. There's different periods where you go through a dip where you're feeling like I'm not learning anything. And then a few weeks later, once you keep doing the work, you realize, oh, I do understand quite a bit. Or you take a break even for programming now. I've actually done a lot of writing recently, so I haven't had as much time to dedicate to it. But I actually found it was quite good because I think it might have given my brain the time to connect the dots that it was missing. Because when I was very kind of like, every day need to get this done, I don't think I left my brain enough room to process and to kind of start connecting. So like I recently wrote an article about the focus mode and the diffuse mode of thinking. So like there's 2 different modes that the brain can go into. And in order to connect the different dots in a different way, you need to give your brain a little bit of time to relax. So just to give a practical technique, you can do the Pomodoro technique for 25 minutes. Give yourself 5 minutes of a break. So that's kind of leveraging the focus mode of thinking for 25 minutes, in the diffuse mode for 5 minutes. So you're getting that concentrated. So in focus mode, you're only ever getting the same types of thinking. So you'll never solve that problem that is different than something you've seen before. So that's where the diffuse mode comes into it. When you give yourself that 5 minutes, 10 minutes of break, where you go walk or speak to a friend or whatever, it gives you that chance to process something differently. So you can ask different questions, approach it differently. So that's, I think that's very important to be aware of, because I wasn't aware of that before. And I think when you're in that focus mode of thinking, when you're getting the same results, you can think differently. You're thinking that that's a sign of me, rather than me not using my brain in the manner I could be using it.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, because I can only connect that to music, because I'm always learning different techniques and different, especially in electronic music, it's literally learning how the machines work and different modules of this kind of thing. And yeah, sometimes I'm like, well, don't really feel like it's getting any, my knowledge doesn't seem to be increasing. But like you say, as soon as you have a bit of a break or you focus on something else, you come back to it. You're like, wow, I actually took in a hell of a lot. And that's it. A lot of it's, you're learning. And until you start actually doing it, you don't realize how much you've actually absorbed. And before, it's about giving your brain enough time to process that in the background.
Yeah.
Because I guess you can't just constantly keep doing it. You've got to have some kind of break in there, yeah?
Yeah, it's like a marathon thing.
Can I, sorry for interrupting. Yeah. I just had a actually amazing thought. Peter, you might actually be fluent in German, but you still don't know that.
It's an interesting thing.
It's actually a funny thing with languages I found is that the less you've on understanding the individual words, and the more you're just kind of letting it soak in, finding the meaning to the conversation, seeing what are they saying to me, how do I respond back? That's what you're looking for there. And it takes a lot of the pressure off this intense kind of focus of, what does this word mean? Because I know when I was learning French, it was like, if I didn't know a word in a sentence, it would throw me off, even though I could have understood the whole meaning without that word. In hindsight, would have been much better for me to approach it with.
Well, you've got me excited again. I mean, it's something that's always... No, but seriously, I'm not just saying that because of the interview. It does niggle. And, you know, I've got lots of friends here, so I've got no excuse, who are actually German nationals, you know. So they just chuckle. They find it funny because now and again they just, you know, they'll mention it just to say, you know, or, for example, we'll meet someone new and it's always like, oh, here's Peter and he's lived here so long and his German is still on this line, you know.
Yeah.
No, but what I actually wanted to with this joke is to get into to take the conversation maybe in a little different direction. And it's actually enjoying what you're doing. It's when you start to talking about breaks in between and doing something else and resting your mind, that makes me think that actually the most we relax is when we are having fun. And then it also doesn't look like work. And I've noticed that as I worked with Denis over a past month or so, that what was holding me back from learning the language wasn't there anymore. And it wasn't the language. It wasn't my inability to learn the language. It was because I've learned English really quickly without actually learning it, but just being immersed in the culture. And I forgot about it. And suddenly I had this difficulty learning another language, which should be pretty much the same. But it was my belief system that it has to be done in a certain time. It has to be done in school. It is really hard. German is really difficult language, and I can't do that. And also, I think that one of the big things was, do I have to do all over again? Like, you know, you struggle with things. You pass certain levels in your life, so to say, as you live. And then it was, you know, I don't want to go on a beginning again. I would just like to continue. So that was the big part, I think, of what we were discussing. And now I don't know if ever I will have to use German as language to speak. And I don't really care. But every evening, every day, I'm doing, you know, as it started as 5 minutes Duolingo, but for me it's just like a game now. I don't fall asleep until I do at least a little bit, and I don't care. You know, I don't think it's waste of my time. I don't think I don't have time, and I don't know how much I'm going to learn, but it doesn't matter. I'm just doing it. So I've come to that stage now, which, you know, there's probably more stages to it. But I don't have that pressure on my head anymore, which is quite interesting. And the same thing happened when I was learning. So basically, what I want to ask you is: are there people that can't learn languages?
I don't believe so. No. I think when you approach language as a communication tool, it's easier, because it's like you come back to, why am I learning the language? I'm learning it for me and I personally. I think for most people, probably, if they're honest with themselves, it's to speak to other people that I wouldn't be able to speak to otherwise, to understand the new culture, a new way of living. Like if somebody is any way curious about a language, they have to be some way driven by that sort of stuff. I can't see why they'd be driven. Like I think why it seems so hard sometimes too is that, say for example, somebody might need to learn a language for a job, and they've got no real interest in that language. So I realized that you need to pick a language that you resonate with most. Like I'm not going to pick a language that I'm not really interested in the people or the culture, or I pick a language that I'm most curious about first. And that makes it easier for me to learn it, because I've got that natural kind of like, oh, I wonder what it'd be like to speak to them or find out more about them, or that kind of thing. And it becomes more lighthearted. And I found myself that it can be quite difficult at the start to go back to that being a beginner. So when I learned French, I went to learn Spanish and Italian, but there was a part in me that was like, oh, do I really want to put myself through all that again? Because it was quite difficult. The way I approached it, it's just my approach changed quite a lot when I started learning Spanish and Italian. But I thought initially I'll be pretty much doing the same thing again. It's going to take so long. But I'm the kind of person that I kind of look at the end goal. I'm kind of like, I want to get there. It doesn't matter how long it's going to take. But given the choice, I'll choose a journey where I actually enjoy the process. So initially that was difficult, but then I started realizing after a while the skills are transferable. So you're never actually starting from zero again. You're only starting in a new field with the knowledge you've already gained in other fields, which are going to stand to you in this new field. So I'd advise, like mentioned at the start of the call, somebody might be thinking of going into a different career. If you decide you want to do it, then you can start learning it. Like, just get clear on why you want to do it in the first place. If it's because you think it's trendy or that kind of thing, it probably won't work. But if you're somebody who's like, I'm actually curious, I want to get good at this, even though this is computer programming and I'm a language person, I want to understand this. So when you start doing that, you start working consistently and progressing, your different perspective on things will be an advantage to you. You're seeing things differently to somebody who's just been computer programming their whole life. So you're going to add some advantages, they'll add some advantages to you, so you can work as a team with different perspectives.
I like the idea of what you're saying about curiosity, because I think as humans, that's one of our most human traits, that if you pick something where you're curious about it, that's half the battle, isn't it? Like you said, pick something that, I think I'll make a lot of money and it's really trendy at the moment. And that's, I guess, where a lot of people do pick certain things. I've done it before in the past, but then it kind of burns out, you lose interest in it. But if you've got curiosity and you're thinking, I'm actually excited about that, I'm really, even if it's half interest there, just like, I want to know how that works. It looks like it could be cool. That's going to help a lot, and it will probably help in terms of your resilience as well. Because when it does get a bit tough, like anything, it's climbing, getting to that peak, and it's going to be tough. The closer you get to actually mastering it, the harder it gets, if that makes sense. Or what would you think? Because sometimes people give up just on the cusp of absolutely nailing something really well. I know I've done it before, and I look back, and you look back in hindsight, I've been really close to things. I thought, well, why did I stop? I was actually, I'd done all the hard work. Yeah,
that makes complete sense. It's like you've got a lot of different paths in front of you. Every one is difficult in their own way. So it only makes sense for me to choose a path that I want to go on, knowing that every path is difficult, because that will give me that resilience. So what occurred to me there is that, like, in a language, you can get to like 70% conversational fluency with about 3,000 of the words. But then that next 90% is probably between 70 to like 90. That's another like 6,000-7,000 words. Like, there's a huge difference there. So that's kind of like, when you know that, you realize that to get to that end goal is going to require a lot of resilience on your part. And that natural resilience will come from that natural curiosity and that natural kind of want and desire to do something well until you get good at your craft. So that's not going to come from a craft you didn't choose out of curiosity or from something you really want to get good at. So that's how I look at it. And that's why I believe that it's just a question of whether you want to learn the language or not. I think everybody will be able to learn it. Because everybody can communicate with other people.
And everybody have learned at least one language already. So that means that they can learn another one and another one.
That's how I started off with Spanish and Italian. I look back to, how did I learn as a baby? I was not self-conscious. I didn't even have that awareness to be self-conscious. And that's how I learned. I learned through trial and error, making mistakes. I wasn't too bothered about looking foolish because I didn't even have that idea. So, and I think that it was when I was living in Luxembourg for a bit, I saw that there was like kids speaking 5 or 6 languages. I didn't think anything about it at all. It was like just normal. And for me as an Irish person coming from a place where I didn't know anybody who spoke another language, I was like, how the hell are they thinking this is normal? They're speaking 5 languages and I can only speak 1. And I'm struggling to learn French. I was like, but then I was like, there has to be something to this, like, because if everybody in that community thought that was just how it is, they didn't question it. I was like, there must be something to this. So that's kind of, I think, some of the drive behind why I learned Spanish and Italian together. Because I could have chosen just to learn one, but I started reading stuff that people are saying, oh, you can't learn them both at the same time, you're going to get confused. And I got in that stage where I was fed up of listening to everybody else's opinions. And I was like, why not just challenge it. And it was the same thing with computer programming. It was like, I met a guy who said, you don't need to be a math genius. And I said, I learned some Spanish and Italian myself, so why not give it a go at computer programming and create a website? I said, worst case scenario is that I just realize I can't do it and just move on. At least I learned something from that. There's no such thing as wasted time. I'll learn what didn't work, so I'll move on to something else. But then when I started doing it, I realized he was right. You don't need to be a math genius to be a computer programmer. Actually, as a language person, what stood to me was that I'm used to having to have things structured correctly. As a language student, to get my message across, as a translation student, it was like, has to be very precise at times. And the same thing in computer programming, you have to have it like structurally correct or it won't run. And what I liked about computer programming, I think with the languages, I kind of got tired of the subjectivity. So like you're graded from somebody, it depended on the person. I realized that for English and that kind of thing, it was like, it was up to them whether they gave you a good grade, their perception of your work. Whereas with computer programming, it was like it either runs or it doesn't. There's creativity in computer programming, but at the end of the day, the computer is binary. It hasn't got an opinion about you. It's not taking things personally. It's like it works one way for everybody. So I like that kind of aspect of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And can I ask you, Denis, how do you see mentors playing a role in terms of learning and people's learning journey?
Yeah, so that's something that I kind of copped onto, I suppose, the last 2 or 3 years, that instead of me making my own mistakes and learning from them, which is good, once I learn from them, it's good, I could learn from other people who figure stuff out already that I wouldn't have to waste my time. So last year I heard a guy called Clever Programmer, and he was embodying what I kind of approached, the way I approach things, but he was really good at computer programming. I could see he knew a lot of stuff, and he had a lot of general knowledge too. I like that about him, that he wasn't just computer programming, he was reading stuff about everything. He realized that so as a computer programmer, it's not just the technical skills, it's actually the soft skills that are, and he was saying it's probably the soft skills you need, like, are 70% more important than the technical skills. Because if you can't actually communicate with people effectively, you're not going to get clients, and clients are what's going to give you the money. So, so like I hired him. Initially, I came across a guy called Ty Lopez as well on YouTube. And I realized too, it doesn't have to be in-person mentors. Like if you're finding it difficult finding somebody, like at the time I was thinking, how am I going to find somebody who knows a lot of stuff, who'll be willing to take their time out and teach me? I realized that I can find people online. I can read books. You can find mentors in them. Like there are 2 barriers to entry gone straight away, so you have no excuse not to have mentors. And then gradually I hired Clever Programmer. So I came across him randomly on YouTube, and now we've got we know each other. I did one-to-ones with him. I do a bit of work now for him as well. And I think Ty Lopez, he had a TED Talk where he talked about the law of 33%. I thought it was a brilliant law. It's like a positive reinforcement cycle. So like spend 33% of your time with people who are above you a level. They'll make you feel a bit uncomfortable. That's what you want to grow. Then spend 33% of your time around people who are on the same level as you. So you can work together. And then 33% of your time with people who are a little bit like under your level, so you can bring them up and you can feel good that you're doing something as well. You're giving back. So I thought that was a really good law, a really good way of looking at things.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. Yeah, I totally can agree and resonate with that, because having someone just to, putting yourself in a group where they're, you're like, wow, how am I ever going to get to that level? It just gives you a natural push. Yeah, it can also make you feel a little bit like, oh my God, I'm never going to get there. Mm. But again, you meet people who really you connect with and you can, talk with, then they're going to push you up anyway. They're going to keep you entertained. And like you say, you can also then share it back or paying it forward or whatever the hell you want to call it. Because I don't know about you, I love, meeting people who have gone through a similar journey. And then just by having, a normal conversation, human to human, and having a good connection with them, you can also give them some insights. That's what it's all about, really. And, because I just wish sometimes if I look back, I always think about my own life and think, wow, if I had a mentor or someone who just shared that with a little bit of wisdom back then, I would have gone in a different direction. So why would you not?
So I'm reading a book called The Talent Code at the moment. And they're mentioning that during the Renaissance, that was one of the key things. It was apprenticeships. It was like craft guilds, I think, at the time that they had in Florence and these places. and that's something I'd seen as well. Like Alexander the Great, they all had mentors. Einstein had mentors, and so I think it was like Socrates, Plato. Like these are all mentored by each other, and so the knowledge gradually goes down. And the Renaissance came, a large part of it, from these mentorships, these apprenticeships, for like Michelangelo and these people. It wasn't just some natural inborn talent. They actually spent a lot of hours and they were learning from other people. That's and it was kind of like these hotbeds of talent, and rather than just being this unique genius. So yeah, I think, and that's probably something we could do with today in society, a little bit more apprenticeships in academia, rather than it just being like you've got your trade here, and you've got your academics over here. If you had people who are like knowledge-based workers who are doing apprenticeships, I think you might have a better system that you'll have, especially when it comes from a place of you've got a mentor who's got good intentions for you, who wants to help you, but is also being honest with you. They're not like beating around the bush and like trying to not go there or whatever. They're giving you honest feedback. So it's that instant feedback. So for me with speaking as well now, it's like something that I know that I can get instant feedback from my audience. So it's not something necessarily that I've been like, I'm dreaming to do this, because it can be uncomfortable to start off with. But I know that by doing that, I will get some instant feedback. And that's what I'm looking for, that instant feedback to improve a little bit more each day.
Yeah, well, it's valuable, isn't it? Sometimes the feedback, you're like, oh, I don't like that. Yeah. But you can say whatever you want, and, you know, you can create that story in your head, but you have to face it at some point. So it's, you know, it's those little nuggets where people say, you know, you could have done it this, and you know, your ego kicks in and is like, no, I'm not going to take that. But later on, it's, you know, it always pops up and you're like, okay, now I'm ready. That was really useful. But at the time, sometimes it's like you put a wall up. It's like,
the thing is, it gets me out of my head. Like that's the key thing now I've seen, is that, do I want to keep living in my head with these kind of anticipations about what will happen, or do I want to just like live day to day, taking action and get out of my head? Because the reality isn't as bad as what I make up in my head when it comes to these types of things.
Yeah, that's really valuable, because half the stuff that goes on in your head, it's just, you know, it's not reality. Sometimes it's useful, but a lot of the times it's kind of stopping you. So just for someone else external to go, hey, it just jolts it, doesn't it? It just makes it easier to clear.
Yeah.
And also, I'm just thinking, you know, when we talk about mentors as well, I don't know about you, but when I've been a mentor for someone else, you learn a hell of a lot. You know, because even people say they're experts, I'm always a bit scared, because it's like, if you're an expert, doesn't that mean that you've stopped learning? But a mentor, that's like someone who's sharing the knowledge, but also you're opening up to someone else. And also, I don't know about you, when you speak to other people who are in that learning stage, they teach you so many amazing things along that journey as well. It's just like, wow.
Yeah, you remember your own journey, and you remember where you were and where you are, and that memory is kind of reinforcing where you want to be. Does that make sense? I mean, that's how. I mean, I guess I have a particular thing in my mind. I had, and I shared this dream with Peter, and he's like, yeah, let's do this. Having a permanent retreat in Croatia. And I think I mentioned it to you once. And it just always felt impossible. Like, yeah, that's great, but this is life, you know? And whenever I think about it, I feel amazing, but then, you know, I kind of forget what I want because I get too busy thinking that it's not possible. But every time, you know, I kind of remember that. And as a mentor, you teach people what you know. So even little things that you have forgotten on the way or are not in your consciousness at the moment, they come up, and then you go, actually, this is what I really want. You know,
that's great.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me. It's kind of, I suppose it's it's practicing what you preach. It's like when I can come from that place of like that, I'm open more for hearing and learning from them too. And that makes teaching more enjoyable for me, because I used to think you had to be the misunderstanding that as a teacher you need to know everything the student knows. But when I come from a place of I know a bit more than you, that's why you're coming to me, but we're working from a framework here, and I'll actually you might point out something I've been blinded to my whole life, or I might be able to remember something that I'd forgotten about, like you mentioned there. When I can come from that approach, it's like it's win-win, because I'm actually growing and learning with the student at the same time, and I'm enjoying it. Like it's a different feeling, it's a different energy.
Enjoying, yeah.
Don't know about you as well. It also reminds me of why I was doing it in the first place. So that spark gets ignited again, and again, just by having that interaction and knowing that you're on the journey with someone, it's like, wow. It's just we talk about reminding us things. It's like, shit, this is why I got into it. This is amazing. And then it gets you excited, and it gives you more momentum to go off to look at some other direction.
Yeah.
So win-win for me. I don't see why anyone wouldn't help each other, because as soon as you do, it always leads to something else that's like, wow, okay, really happy I connected with this person, because I would never have got to that level of thinking, or it's just opened the door that I didn't even imagine was possible.
It's that connection, and I guess the biggest part for me is actually to get across my love for learning to the student. And for me, I judge it as a success if I can see that they're actually excited by learning again, and their own ways of looking at it and stuff. But if I can see that excitement that mightn't have been there when I met them first, that's for me is a success, because I just continue on my path. I still love learning, and I want to help other people too, because I do believe that we do want to learn as human beings, that we want to progress, that we want to evolve, and that we actually enjoy it when we approach it with a mindset of curiosity and understanding that it's difficult, but ultimately it's an enjoyable process in the big picture. So yeah, because I think there's nothing worse than just stagnating and just not opening yourself up to trying new things, because you're putting yourself in that box of this is me, this is my world, it's very small. When you kind of start opening up to other people, other points of views, what was kind of useful for me to understand was that I don't necessarily need to agree with everything the person does in their life. I can learn from the stuff they do well, because I look at myself and I'm not infallible either. I make mistakes and that kind of thing. So when I turn it back, because I think I used to be choosy about who I'd learn from, but then I started just learning from everybody. And that just made it a lot easier, because I didn't have to pay attention to what was going on in their life, that kind of thing. I can't follow this person because he's done this or that. Or when they've been speaking wisdom that I can actually learn from, and then when realize that I am the same way. I'll speak some wisdom sometimes, and I'll speak some rubbish other times.
Well, that's a great insight, because we can all get a bit picky. They're not really, different personalities, or you don't live what they're doing in certain aspect of the life. But being able to park that, just to know that you're going to accept wisdom wherever you can see it, that's really massive, no? Just sharing with people.
What I'm thinking about now, all these things that we said today, and the huge thing was enjoy in what you're doing. Pick something that you would like for one reason or another. Let go of certain results. Is that correct? That's how I kind of understood you can do whatever you can learn whatever you want to learn. Get some mentors around yourself, connect with some people that have a positive outlook, and every skill can be learned. It's just what's stopping us. It's ourselves and our thoughts about it.
I think what you said there, letting go of the results, letting go of the outcome, it's important, all right? Because it's when I initially started learning computer programming, my idea was that I'll become a computer programmer because that was what I could see at the time. This is me kind of being realistic here. even though at the back of my mind I was creating happy minds, and I was like, I'd love for this to be a business. I'd love to like be teaching and coaching people, but I didn't see that as like a possibility for me. I didn't see myself as that person, that kind of thing. But I found when I learned a skill and I let go of the outcome, I'm like just open to whatever happens day to day and just kind of following wherever I'm going. That makes it easier for me to enjoy my day to day, which was ultimately my goal in the first place. I want to be like living as much as possible in the present and enjoying what I have right now. And I found that letting go of certain specific outcomes makes that easier, because I start to see that my happiness isn't dependent on that outcome. My happiness is actually found in the process of learning something and me growing and meeting new people, connecting with people, seeing how I can help in the world and how like I can help myself to evolve. That's kind of what it boils down to for me now.
Yeah,
that must be very liberating, no? When you be in the present and not, like you say, because we all get, there's nothing wrong with having, milestones. When you hit them, it's good to celebrate and have some goals. But sometimes we get so fixated on the end of it, the actual journey part, we even forget. And, I don't know about you, but most of it is literally all the baby steps that you make. That's the buzz part. That's the cool bit. And like you say, if you can just appreciate that in the moment at the time, then in a weird kind of way, it almost makes the outcome not really that important, because if you're having that much fun along the way, you'll probably get there anyway. No?
That's it. That's the paradox there. It's like when you're enjoying what you're doing, the rest takes care of itself, because you're not actually caught up in those stories of, see, that's the thing. What I found is that it's those stories that are getting in the way of me doing this stuff. It's these stories that I can't do a podcast. It's these stories that I can't write a blog. That was getting in the way of me actually just kind of going, I'll buy the domain name, I'll set up the page, I'll create one post today. The post today is only about 200 words. The last one was 800 words. Fine, I'll just publish it. It's kind of like that. There's no actual rules to this. So the more I can see that, and the more, like, all I need then is to actually be open to learning from my mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of, I try and keep in mind that I try and not make the same mistake twice, even though I will do that. But at least that's kind of my rule of thumb for progress, is that allows me to be okay with making mistakes, but to have that awareness that I do need to learn from these mistakes.
Yeah, there's a difference, isn't there? Making the same mistake over and over again, or just going forward. And I guess the very fact that you're learning something new, there's going to be some learning. So you're going to make the odd mistake now and again, but that's totally fine.
It's the only way to learn, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can't.
Sorry, go on.
No, I mean, it's like in a language. I would, before, if I make a mistake, I'll go, oh my God, me again, I can't do this. But now, if I make a mistake, it's, okay, so this means it's a new word and I don't know it yet. That's why I made a mistake. So I'm progressing.
Yeah, it's being kind to yourself. Just recognizing that progress too, because you are learning something. It might be at a different pace as somebody else, but that doesn't matter. You're only competing against yourself. So.
That's actually really important, Denis, what you've just said there, to be kind, to give yourself permission to, trip over now and again. That's really important, because Mira, I'll tell you, I'm quite hard on myself sometimes, and then that can spill over into other people, because, you get a little bit judgmental. Whoa, why is that person not getting this? But then if you reverse engineer that, it's always just coming from inside. It's like, okay, maybe I just need to go a bit easier on myself, and then that will help in other aspects of your life. To give yourself permission to just, not take it so seriously. Have a bit more fun in there. So if you do make a mistake, what people wouldn't see with, this recording is before we had a few comedy moments. Whereas before I would have got really in my head and got really angry. Oh, we can't do this anymore. This is rubbish. But actually, if you really, remain calm, it's just part of the joy of doing things.
There's always technical problems.
Yeah. And Denis, can I ask you, just so other people can find you, mention them Happy Mindset, can you just explain to people exactly where and how, we can find you and people can connect with you?
Yeah, so like the Happy Mindset, I've got a YouTube channel that you can just search the Happy Mindset on YouTube, you'll find it. So I put up the podcast videos on there, and I'm also starting doing some book reviews on there. I do a video and I write a blog post on it. And then like I've got a podcast, so it's on iTunes, it's on Stitcher, Castbox, and and Podbean. And then I've got my website, The Happy Mindset, where I write blog posts. And I think that's about it for now.
Seems like a lot.
Speaking.
Good.
Seems like a lot.
No, in a good way. I mean, you've been busy, which is great.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's just been incremental stuff. I often have the feelings where you're feeling like you're trying to do everything at once, but then it's okay having. It's like being okay with having those feelings. But when I look back in hindsight, it was actually just step by step. I didn't actually just do it all at once. Like this has probably been a year and a half working on a happy mindset intentionally, and then probably 5 or 6 years indirectly I was working on it through trial and error, reading books and all that kind of thing. Yeah. But on the Happy Mindset too, I've got a list of all the books, or a lot of the books that I've read over the last few years.
Yeah. Now this has been really useful to me, Denis, because I'm always looking forward to your book reviews. Because again, like you said before, remember I was asking you about, you talked about podcasts, and it's something that Mira and I had not really looked at yet, but I can see the benefits because everyone absorbs information in a different way. And a podcast is, you can take it, it's very mobile, you could be on your journey, etc., etc. Useful. And the fact that you mentioned about baby steps, I think that's the most crucial thing about learning, isn't it? That a lot of people just look at you, when you've been successful, and I guess from the outside they think, wow, Denis is doing a lot there. But there's a lot of work behind the scenes, and it can take time. And it's, like you say, it's baby steps, taking action in small chunks really is important, no? As long as it's the small chunks that are, makes sense.
That's it, yeah. And it'll make sense as you're doing it too. Like when you're operating more from a place of, why you're doing the skill, or even if you're in a place where you're not sure yet, it's kind of when you question why I'm doing this, and you're kind of more clear on that rather than I'm doing this to get a job and doing this to whatever. When you kind of question why am I doing this, it'll make more sense to you to either stop and do something else or to actually continue on, but from a place of why you're doing it. So that's the key thing, and then the baby steps that go along with that, and it'll make sense to you how you increment that over time. So I've never got this rule that I'll only spend 20 minutes every day. I'll have a small little thing. I'll at least spend 20 minutes a day, but if I do more, great. If I do less, great too. It's fine.
And that's a wisdom right there, isn't it? Not to beat yourself up. So, I do this. Oh, I must spend 2 hours recording this particular thing, or I must spend an hour writing up some content for marketing or this and that. And I don't do it. In the past, I would be like, okay, that's not cool. And then I would waste a lot of time going around in a loop thinking about it, as opposed to versus action,
Yeah.
And it's okay. So if it's only 10 minutes one day, or even if you don't do it one day, the fact that you're taking regular stepped action that's what it's all about now.
Start small. Even with the speaking thing now, I'm starting small. It's I'm happy with a handful of people there, because it'll give me that kind of domain to give me room to experiment a bit more. I think comedians do that. They go out in areas and they'll test jokes, and even the famous ones, before they go on stage and do it. So it's practice and repetition. And there's a TED coach that I'm working with at the moment for speaking. Mm-hmm. And I think you're in the course too, aren't you, Peter? Are you?
For which story?
For Sonus, the Sonus's course.
I've got the details and I'm on the mailing list. I haven't been able to stop.
Oh, okay.
But it's something that scares the shit out of me, if I'm honest.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, but imagine doing a TEDx talk or something. And I kind of have to do public speaking in my job. We're doing this, so I'm getting more comfortable. But to think of a big stage, like something that high end in terms of, if you're up there, you must be, I'm looking from the outside in. You must be.
But she said an interesting thing to me recently, that about 80% of TED speakers are introverts, and that it's when they go through the process with the ones she coaches in it, they'll do it 200, 300 times before they even go on stage. Mm-hmm. So they have that kind of in their muscle memory, and it's flows off more easily. So it's just being aware that these people, but most of them don't just jump on stage and it's like time for to perform like that. That there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the background that we don't see.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have it all memorized.
Yeah.
And they have general, I don't know, I guess it's like a theater before you actually go on stage with the act. They have rehearsals.
And I suppose when they do go on stage, my impression from what I've been learning is that you don't know exactly what's going to come out then. You've got this kind of framework that you've rehearsed to a T, but then you go on stage and it could be some way different to what you expected.
But that's cool now because there's a bit of improv in there. Yeah. I don't know. I've always in the past used to be telling myself it has to be this structured and it must be delivered in, clinically exactly how I rehearsed it. Mm. But I kind of threw out can't even speak. I threw it out the window. For example, in my job I'm doing now in the corporate world, I used to get a lot of panicky thoughts about presenting and this, that, and the other. But as soon as I could get over that and I just went in, just knowing the basic content, just by connecting with the people in the room, that was half the battle. The rest of it would unfold and work out. I'm not going to lie, there's still times when it was difficult or the subject matter was a bit tough because, you don't always have full control over that. But the more I connected with people and just relaxed, the easier it become because people don't want you to fail. And you can pick that up straight away. How many times have you been in a room with a presenter and it's not really gone well? And instead of, being, oh my God, this is rubbish, you've been like, no, come on, it's fine. And you're generally quite, forgiving, if that's the right word.
Yeah. That's useful to know. I think, yeah. That's probably the difference when you do go out there in front of people. It's like you kind of think it works the opposite way. Sometimes it's like they're out to get me or something. But yeah, but like what you're saying there, I think it's getting clear on who you are and what your message is for a speaker, and that makes it easier then because you once you get that solid foundation, then the rest is like structure and stuff you can build, and then you can improvise a little bit around that, but you can't really improvise around what my message is. So when you ask me what do I do, if I'm not clear on who I am and what I do, it's not going to work really. I can work a little bit with the structure and the way I say things, but if I'm not clear on what I actually provide as a service, I don't have a business yet. Or I don't know that.
Yeah, it makes sense. And what you said before, Denis, about repetition, throwing yourself out there and just doing it. That's it. The more you do it, the more you become relaxed with it, and it becomes more like an extension of who you are.
Practice.
Yeah, how many people have you heard the narrative's pretty similar, almost universal, that a lot of the best public speakers, you look at them and think, wow, it's just so effortless for them. But then when you actually get to know them, they're like, fuck, I used to hate this. It used to be the worst nightmare, and it's just a matter of I got over myself. Yeah. It's the ego bit. Once you can drop it, and it always pops up, it's always going to be there. But once you can just park it, that's when the magic happens. Because you can, in a good way.
I think the ego can be useful too at times. Like it will give you that drive to do something. Like initially it started off with me, I'm going to prove them wrong. I'm going to learn IT. I'm going to learn these languages. To hell with them. So it does give me that, and I suppose I still use it to some extent or whatever. Like again, it's just a concept now. Like just whatever you like. What I found too is that you can only work with what's in front of you. So like whatever makes sense to me, to use it and to move me forward. And in hindsight, like from my experience, I'm always going to be learning something where I'm like, how did I think that way before? So with that knowledge, I have to start somewhere. So I start right now with what I have, no matter what it is, to move me forward. So.
Well, that makes sense because, if you think back, when we learn stuff and we go forward, we do change completely. Our personality changes to certain degrees. What we even our belief system, it can shift in weird and wonderful ways. So what we are right now, if you rewind, even for me 6 months ago, it's totally different. And that, as long as you have that open mindset going forward, then that's quite useful to know because it stops you, you're always going to have these thoughts that trap you a little bit, but that's normal. But just knowing that you're going to keep moving and changing, that's quite good to know. You're not fixed. Because, when you're in a bad place, you can really believe it that I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying in this position. But you only have to think back of any times when you were in those situations, and then you think about where you are right now, and it's always shifted.
Yeah.
And
whether you believe that or not, it's always going to happen. You can't really stay fixed, even if you want to. It's quite difficult.
That's the end of the learning process. Like, there's always mistakes there. It's just a matter of whether you're willing to look at them or not. Whether you're willing to look at like what your learning was built on or not. Like, that's all it is. And, yeah.
How would you say? I mean, in terms of your way you structure learning, because obviously you're helping a lot of people with this, and you're sharing that knowledge. How would you say, just to give people a snapshot? So, if you think of the Denis right now, what about 6 months ago? How would you say that's changed?
I can give you an example. Last year, I was terrified of going on YouTube. But what I did was I came across a course where they were doing private, like a private community where you posted private YouTube links so nobody saw it outside of the community.
Okay.
So that made a huge difference for me because it got me a little bit more comfortable with camera. And I wasn't yet in an environment where I was open to any haters or whatever. It was just you're in a community where people are giving you kind of feedback and encouragement. So that was really useful. And so just even last year, so like that fear, like when I do YouTube and stuff now, there's a little bit, but not much. It's like, it's more from a place of my message and less of this thinking of how am I being perceived. That's what was the problem there. It was like, I was trying to cater to everybody's perceptions and getting lost in that maze of that. Even though at the time I knew that the truth was that you're going to have trolls, you're going to have people who agree with you, people who don't agree with you. That's just the reality of the matter. But when I didn't see that, it was hard to believe it. But then when I did the little things like going on YouTube with the private stuff, slowly kind of send a signal to myself that, yeah, I've got these self-doubts, but I'm not willing to not take action because of them. And then gradually it was sending a message that I'm acting in spite of these self-doubts. So it made less and less sense for me to take them seriously.
That's really valuable, isn't it? Yeah, the fact that you had these doubts, but you can still move. They're going to enter your head, but that's fine.
Yeah.
And just by taking action, they just don't have any effect. They don't stop you. Yeah, but you don't have to even ignore them or have a strategy. They're there.
No.
If you take action, crucially, they don't stop you doing anything unless you really start to believe that narrative in your head. No.
Yeah, they'll give me a bit of uncomfortable feelings and stuff, but I'm still acting, and then I become less and less tense and uncomfortable as I keep taking action. It's kind of that's been my process in life for it.
And do you watch back any of this stuff when you recorded it? Do you watch yourself?
Yeah, that's a weird, like with the podcast and stuff. I generally like I'll watch them because I need to do some like editing and give the timings and that kind of thing. But I generally don't really listen to too much after that. Yeah, I don't know what. I think it's because I just want to be doing other stuff because they're like an hour long, the interviews. I don't want to be spending hours upon hours listening to the same stuff or that I'm doing.
Yeah.
But like it's good to get some perspective. But I suppose a lot of the time I just think in my mind to how was I living rather than having to see it in front of me. I can remember how I used to approach things and what was stopping me. Like I would have never given a talk last year. I would have been terrified of it. And a lot of it would have been, oh, who am I to speak? And this sort of thing.
And that's an inspiration to others now, just to hear you say that. That's just 6 months. How many times have we, got up one day when we're in a dark place and like, we're not going to achieve anything. And then fast forward 6 months and it's like, wow, okay, where did that come from?
Yeah.
That's amazing to share with people that, if you just have a little, little bit of a spark there that there's, something's possible.
Yeah.
And you're going to get fresh thinking. That's really amazing, huh?
Yeah. And like for me, it was like take the baby steps. It's like, I never tend to get too carried away. I kind of go a little bit at a time. But I like to kind of try and keep grounded because I know that's where my clarity of mind is. It's not in this big massive results that I could achieve. Whenever I feel I'm going there too much, I try and like see what's important to me and where I want to go and how I want to live. So that little bit of awareness helps me because sometimes it's easy for me to get carried away with certain things. When I start looking at the feeling, I always kind of feel tense and not that actually enjoying those things. Where I'm most happy is when I'm like taking action and I'm just like relaxed and kind of more clear-headed and Yeah, that's kind of my center where I want to be. And then when I'm in those emotions of turmoil, sometimes it's knowing that I can always come back to that center at some stage, that I will come back. That's kind of that's been very useful for me. Right?
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah, I guess I think that we succeeded in our intention to show people that it's possible to do things that we thought we couldn't, and that we all have moments where we don't believe that it's possible, but then we still go back and do it, and that then we proving ourselves that we can do it. And we all have those moments in life, so it's not that somebody's special and they can do it and somebody isn't special and they can't do it. It's pretty much universal that we all have minds and thinking and doubts and insecurities, and but you just go forward and you get there.
That's it.
Beautiful. Okay, then would you like to say anything before we close?
I think that's about it. I think like if somebody is on the verge, they want to learn something new, they want to try something new, I think it's just try it. And when you're doing it, it'll occur to you whether you want to do it or not. And to just realize that everything's transferable, that you're never ever starting over from scratch again. It might feel that way, but you're not. You stuff you've learned from the last field. And if they want to reach out, then, or you can follow, like I've started Instagram recently where I try and post some quotes that I found useful over the years, and just maybe some snippets of the questions I've been asking on the podcast. So I think that could be useful in the Facebook page too. And if you want to contact me, then I'm working with people around language learning. So I help them mainly with the actual process itself. So we ask them better questions. We try and find out what works for them and kind of get, why are you learning this? Why are you coming to me? And I just find that helps people an awful lot to just get more in touch with their learning process. And that's what I find is the most useful, rather than me trying to spoon feed somebody. I got a little framework, but I wanted to come from them and just kind of ask better questions and enjoy the process. That's it.
Yeah, I've enjoyed this process. How about you, Peter? Do you have anything to say before we close?
No, it's been a pleasure, and it's been really insightful to hear your journey and to know that it is possible and there's practical steps you can take. I think that's really important. And it's got me interested in learning German again. We'll definitely have to talk offline. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Because I know you've shown me the structure, so that'd be cool. And obviously, when we post this, we'll put up some links for people that are interested anyway, so they can obviously visit your page, download your podcast, that kind of thing.
Cheers, thanks. Great. I might actually put this on my podcast as well if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh yeah,
that's okay. Just send me on probably be like in March or something. I think that'll be episode 14 or something. But yeah, I'll throw it on there if you want to send me I just need the MP4 and the MP3 then.
Great.
Okay, we'll do that. Thanks very much. Yeah,
Thanks,
we just want to show people what's possible, and at the same time show ourselves what's possible. So I really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm really happy with it. Des, thank you very much, both of you.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
There you have it. That was episode number 14. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to follow the podcast, you can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Castbox, and the other podcasting networks. Or you can subscribe to YouTube if you want to stay up to date with what's happening with the Happy Mindset Show. So until next time, have fun and enjoy the process.